Thanks for tuning in to the Marvel Movie Minute.
Want to skip those pesky ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a weekly podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 5 minutes at a time. In this, our 9th season, we're looking at Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I'm Pete Wright.
You went a little bit pirate there. I'm Kyle Olson from the Craft and Chaos podcast. Yar?
And I'm a very sick Matthew Fox.
Oh, man. Today, we're talking about minutes 21 through 25, which begins with Peggy and old Peggy and ends with a hushed favor shared between the bestest of friends. Okay, we're back in nostalgia land. And if I recall from last week, Kyle, this is some of your favorite material in the movie.
Well, I'm a huge Peggy Carter fan. Like, I think Haley Atwell's version of Peggy Carter is phenomenal, and the more we get to see her, the better it is. And so we sort of ended last time in the flashback, and we kind of thought that was it. Like, it was him looking at this amazing archival footage that, you know, probably he had never seen before, and her talking about him, and then we transition over to Peggy Carter is still alive.
Yeah. See, this one
for the moment.
Yeah. We're the clock is ticking on Peggy Carter. But let me just say, last week, Kyle, you asked me if it was a surprise that Peggy would show up in this movie, and in the video, it was not a surprise. This cut was absolutely a surprise that she's there and she's aged up and she's still just as dope as ever.
So before we get into like their actual conversation, what are your guesses on how long she was in makeup to go from what Haley Atwell is to this woman like that we see here? Because that is Haley Atwell. Like, that is.
It is Haley Atwell. And it's complicated to answer that question because of all the just straight up innovation they did to do this. I did read up on it, so I may be spoiled. I'll give it to Matthew.
I was thinking of this as I was looking at her because I wasn't sure if it was like prosthetics with all the wrinkles and stuff or just pure makeup. So I'd say maybe 3 hours, 4 hours.
No, about 20 minutes. They basically put a wig on her, and that was it. All of this is done digitally. So this was one of the first times that sort of the anti-aging stuff that we had seen in like the X-Men movies and things was reversed. And so they actually added wrinkles onto her. So I even have an image of them shooting this scene, and it's literally just her with a couple dots on her face and a gray wig. All of what you're seeing was done afterwards by a group called the Lola visual effects team, who are still in. They were one of the first people to do this sort of thing, and now a bunch of different houses are doing it, but they were one of the innovators of wrinkling actors as opposed to unwrinkling them.
We've talked about Lola quite a bit on the show because of Skinny Steve. They are actually the same team that did Skinny Steve in the first Avenger. What is so interesting about this is that Haley Atwell may have had an easy run on makeup for this, but the other people who they brought in did not have quite as easy, because they did try prosthetics in test footage. They had a young woman. They tried different layers of prosthetics. They had all kinds of different old age makeup they were trying to do. And eventually they ended up finding an elderly woman to stand in, and they put the rig on her head and they recorded her, and they stole her wrinkles and skin translucency and applied them to Haley Williams, which I find absolutely diabolical.
I think she, I'm sure that little lady is sitting in the theater when they came out and was like, those are my wrinkles.
I recognize that liver spot.
I'm in the movie.
Look at my crease. Yeah.
If you need an episode title, I think it'd be fun.
I think this is actually outstanding, and it didn't take me out of the movie at all. I was completely, I was hornswoggled by this effect. I really was.
I was bamboozled.
I was bamboozled. Yeah.
So when I knowing that, when I sort of watched it closely again, around the lips is sort of where I see the most, where it's like that gets a little, but that's even now with the AI nonsense we have to deal with now, lips are some of the hardest things to do. But the rest of it, I thought it still looks just phenomenal.
And you notice it, the only shot that I can really pull it out is when she turns her head and then turns back while talking. That's when the lips start to look a little bit. But when she's just sitting still, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to talk about the nostalgia piece, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, I like this because this may be, as far as Steve knows, this may be one of the only people who knew him from then who's still alive.
Yeah.
I mean, in his thought, like we know that there are sort of other ones around, but like as far as he knows, she might be literally the last link to his past, the direct like person who knew him as little skinny Steve, and now that here she is, and she's still the same Peggy where he's saying all this stuff about like, oh, I wanted to, and she's like, you were always so dramatic, and I was like, Peggy gets him.
Yeah.
Like she understands this dude all the way, because yes, he is, like as we'll see even into Civil War, like okay, like kind of a drama queen. Like he really has his big like, I'm going to make my stance. Like, all right, Steve, like doesn't always have to be a declaration in it, like, but she sees through all of that, and I love that.
It made me wonder if there was some other version of this scene. Maybe it never made it to paper, it was just in someone's head, but where they talked a little bit more directly about the direction that S.H.I.E.L.D. had gone in. Because one thing from the first movie, and I think we saw in some of the other stuff with her, is that he's the idealist and she is somewhat more of a realist.
Yes.
And he says at one point, like, part of the only reason why I'm involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. is because I know you founded it. And there's a little bit of a, because you are good and right and true. And so if you founded it, then the organization is too. And I can see a version of the scene where he talks a little bit more explicitly about like his concerns with where S.H.I.E.L.D. is going. And she has some of that, like, come on, Steve, like this is the world we live in. And I think we still get that, and we certainly get the nostalgia stuff. Obviously, is all foreshadowing what we're going to be getting with Bucky later. But I did I was left wondering if there was at some point in imagination that the idea of what S.H.I.E.L.D. should be and what Steve thinks she would let it be was going to be a part of this conversation.
This is where I feel like I wish they were still doing the one shots, because it feels like post Avengers, after the Chitauri, Steve, like, as now leader of the Avengers and, super popular, finds out Peggy is still alive and has that meeting with her. And that's where he sort of makes the decision to join S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, that's not a movie,
right? But
man, that would be a great, like, 20-minute short, or back to the one shots.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it didn't need to be in this movie. We didn't need to see that as like a flashback or whatever, but it's like, oh man, I really would like to see that reunion happen that we never saw.
Yeah. It's like makes Steve's experience in S.H.I.E.L.D. whole, because this really is the first of the MCU films to spend any significant time thinking about Steve's status as a man out of time, right? And the Peggy scene is kind of the emotional proof of concept for this theme, and that he is still alive, carrying some of the spirit of the original S.H.I.E.L.D. makes his sort of retaliation against modern S.H.I.E.L.D. more resonant, I think. And I think you're right. I think that's a whole that ends up being a whole. But I would say on Peggy's part, the dementia element that they introduce, right? The fact that she's dealing with neurological decline is super important. And I don't think it's just pathos for pathos sake, right? Like she's forgetting and re-recognizing Steve in this span of seconds. And it's a devastating kind of language for what Steve experiences on a different register entirely. Like you can be present and awake and still functionally lost in time.
Yeah, that she re-experiences it, and then he has to go through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
of it going again. That's you're having this. Oh, and she's a nice old lady, and it sounds like he's been coming to her on a regular basis and talking about what he's going through. So he has someone, and then she turns and goes back, and it's all gone.
I mean, you were talking about that scene that could be a short. I think that he also could have been, and I'm not saying that the movie needed it, but I could see that have being a scene in Avengers.
Yeah.
When the team has broken up and Steve is trying to decide, is he going to work with this Fury guy? And so he looks to Peggy to try and help figure that out. I will say I appreciate the dementia explanation, because I love that scene, with the exception of her moment of, oh, Steve, it's really you. You did come back. Because I was sitting there going, is this because it felt off to me? It felt forced. And I wasn't sure if that was an acting choices by Haley Atwell, or if it was about the makeup and her facial stuff not really ringing true. I like that the idea that it is because she's kind of fading in and out of comprehension, I think makes sense. But at least to me, that did not come through 100%. And it definitely felt like the whole to me, that minute lost that one portion of that 1 minute lost me a bit.
Yeah, I'll say that landed for me, and I like the fact that what you see Steve go through, that there's that phrase that's going around about the camera, the movie camera is a machine that captures you thinking, and seeing just on Chris Evans, like watching like Steve have to understand what happened, and then we see just from his expression, this is not the first time this has happened. He's gone through this multiple times, and shifts into that caring thing of like, oh no, it's like you owe me a dance and all that kind of stuff. But still, and this is where I think the editors and Russo's is they keep on that for just a couple of seconds, just to you see it land on him of like, okay, so we've reset back to then, and like all the stuff we were just talking about, I can't, and now we have to go back to, oh yeah, and then he's gonna have to tell the story and stuff again, and it's like. And once again, he's disconnected.
Yeah.
Another link to his past is now, and it's been severed again, which I'm sure has happened again and again and again, and he's still, lost.
It raises so many great questions, because one of the things that I'm now really wondering about is, in this timeline that I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the movie is going to tell us of Hydra slowly taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. and of things like Project Insight coming along, in part because of Fury's sort of, concern about the neighborhood getting more dangerous, and the story of his grandfather walking home. When does Agent Carter leave S.H.I.E.L.D.? In that, would she have approved of Project Insight? Maybe she would have. Is it that it's only once she starts to maybe mentally decline a little bit and has to step back, that's when Hydra starts? Like, I'd be very curious to know what that timeline is.
Yeah, we know that as of, let's say, I'm trying to remember from Ant-Man, like it's the 70s, I think, and she's still there because they do that flashback, and it's Howard and her, and that's when Pym.
Oh, in the very opening sequence.
Yeah, and has the big and I think that's in the 70s. So she was still there at that point, and it was S.H.I.E.L.D. It had already made the transition from the SSR to S.H.I.E.L.D., but must have been somewhere, I would say maybe the early 80s or so.
Because by the time of the first Avengers movie, like clearly she's not in any way a part of that discussion of, do you nuke New York or do you let the Avengers work?
Yeah, it would make sense. Like, even as we're going to meet the council, like it would make sense that she would be like on that if she was still sort of involved.
The other thing that I was wondering about, I looked up the TV show Agent Carter comes out just about a year after this. This movie comes out in January, and that show starts in January the next year. And the process of making one of those big TV shows is long enough that I feel like when this is happening, Agent Carter's show is already kind of being discussed and in the beginnings of production and stuff like that. I don't know what the process here was, and I wonder if you guys do, but we talk a lot on this podcast about moments that feel like something is being put into a movie in order to help seed the ground for an upcoming project,
Mhm.
and that's to the movie's detriment. And to me, this feels like the Russo brothers figured out how to do it, you know? And I maybe it is just coincidence, but if someone has said to the Russo brothers, look, we need to have Peggy Carter in this in some way because we want to start reminding people of who she was because she's going to get her own show down the road. You know, this scene doesn't feel forced at all, the way that so often that kind of thing does.
I don't think. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure those conversations happened, but I get the feeling that the Russos are stans. Like they have been Steve plus Peggy shippers from when they watched the first Avengers, because we see how that pays off at the end of the Infinity Saga.
Some of the most emotionally powerful moments in those movies are.
They literally bent the rules of the universe to put these two together because they loved them as a couple so much. So I think it was basically sort of keeping that flame going and them not wanting to end that story, like working with her and wanting to do it. So I'm sure it was all, pseudo organic of like, wouldn't it be fun to? And then a lot of people got involved. That show is still worth watching, by the way. If people have not seen it, it is on Disney Plus at time of recording. They're two great seasons. I wish they would have gone farther. You kind of get an inclination of who she was going to get together with, even though it doesn't really happen before the series got canceled. It does raise some interesting questions that maybe we might have to have us like a sideshow of like, the one shot they did and the series don't jibe.
Yeah,
and
they
I
don't
found a
line
whole
up.
Reddit thread where people were like trying to like figure out how to mesh the two together, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Were you guys surprised when she said, and he changed my life in so many ways, even, that he saved the life of the man who went on to be my husband?
Yeah.
Yes. How'd you what's your feeling on that? Because to me, that's a moment of them not going for the low-hanging fruit that I appreciated, where the way to kind of really...
for you. I waited for decades.
Right. To lampshade that is that I could have never been... And the idea that again, because she's the practical one. Like, I think if the roles had been reversed, Steve would have waited. And I think her feeling was, he's dead. He will be one of my first loves, and that's sad, but I'm still going to have a life. I'm still going to have children. I'm going to find another wonderful person. And that's...
And keep saving the world.
It's a very important character moment for her.
I don't think and because of the complications of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we don't ever really know who Peggy Carter's husband is in this universe.
They never definitively say that this is who the person is, or what happens to her kids.
Yeah.
Like she says in this, she has kids, but like we have no idea what happened to them or where they are or who they are.
Yeah. Yes.
Sharon Carter is her niece, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So from here, we leave the bedside and we transition to Fury's office, where Fury gets to realize that he doesn't have all the passwords.
Isn't that fun?
As nerds, like, are you a little bit excited when the computer keeps saying, no, you don't get to have this?
It was also fun, the fact that he sees that this he has the S.H.I.E.L.D. branded thumb drive, which I don't know why they didn't sell, and finds out that it's encrypted. He can't look at the data because it was encrypted by
him,
by Nicholas J. Fury. And he's so used to having access to all information that immediately this sends him into everything has to stop.
Yeah.
I can't look at this one file.
Yep.
We got it all. We shut it down.
This is what happens when you give the CEO all the passwords, right? All the permissions, right? They throw a tantrum when something doesn't work. That's right. I said it. And so he stomps up 40 floors to meet his buddy, his best buddy.
How big is this building supposed to
be?
Because it was like, I feel like he had a pretty good, a pretty high view, because they get in the elevator and they go down for a while to get into Project Insight. So there's another 40 floors above
him. Yeah.
Him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, there are 1,000 floors in the building in the Triskelion.
Yeah.
So
I guess so.
Yeah. I think was it on an earlier episode of this show that we were talking about how DC actually has an ordinance that a building can't go higher than the Washington Memorial. Yeah, I don't think this building qualifies.
No.
I think it goes significantly higher.
Yeah. So he actually goes, I mean, I don't think there's anything else. Do we need, apart from the, secure the room moment, which I just always love those electrostatic kind of windows, whatever you call those things. Those are fantastic. But apart from that, the rest of it is standard beep, beep, whiz bang. Then we go upstairs and we interrupt a council meeting in progress about the Lemurian star hijacking. And again, more fantastic production design with the conical reflected holograms of the other World Security Council members and Pierce holding court. Robert Redford, it's our first chance to meet Robert Redford, who the Russos have been signaling Robert Redford vibes for a long time leading up to this. All of the promo was like 3 Days of the Condor. You're going to love it, right? Well, here's Robert Redford. Was this a surprise?
Well, I think they used him pretty heavily in the advertising. So, I mean, like, we knew he was coming. But just because this is his first appearance, let me do my thing.
Do it.
Playing Secretary Alexander Pierce, Robert Redford, born in California, 83 acting credits, 10 directing credits on IMDb. Pete, I'm afraid to do this because it has to be you.
Why?
It's time to play the IMDb game.
Oh, God, no.
There are 4. So for those of you who don't know, IMDb picks 4 movies for every actor that's on there, and no one has any idea why these 4 show up. They don't seem to have any rhyme or reason. It's not about ratings. It's not about fan things. It is a complete mystery why the 4 are up there. Now, for these, he's had so many amazing movies that I'm going to tell you, there are no like weird ones that just appear out of nowhere. These are ones but he has so many, it's hard to figure out which 4 they're going to be. So what are your thoughts? And Matthew, feel free to play along too.
I was going to wonder. I'm the chopped liver in this conversation, apparently, but I
guess Pete knows this game, so I know.
My problem is that there are way too many movies, and so I know, even though I think they like Robert Redford and the world likes Robert Redford, it makes me think maybe one of the more recent movies, like Man with a Gun or whatever, Old Man and a Gun or something might be up there, just to throw him a bone. But it's got to be okay. All right, Kyle. All right,
come on. Let's do it.
So
the big 4.
Sundance, Butch and Sundance.
Butch and Sundance, 100%. Ding, first win.
I think it's like
Esty and the Sundance Kid.
Okay.
I'm going to put, because I think this is the first of his political thrillers. It's the one that is directly connected to real life, and that I think he's very well known for, All the President's Men.
Yeah.
Ding, 2. You've got 2 down. So what are the other 2?
Are they going to put another Redford, Paul Newman, and so are they going to put The Sting on there? And that's where I might think I could go with The Sting. Is The Sting in one of his top?
The Sting is not.
Oh God. Okay.
Drawing on what Pete was saying earlier about like him and his older man time, but also because it's a fun callback and it's kind of a silly movie, but also I think one that people now look at as a really good performance by him. I'm going to put Sneakers on the guest list.
I would love if Sneakers was on that list, but that unfortunately is not one of the 4.
Oh, The Natural.
The Natural.
Okay.
Ding, number 3. That's 3.
So we have one more. We had 4 guesses and you're done with us.
That's true. The last one. Any last minute Hail Marys you want to try and put in? It is another one of those. This is another very Oscar.
All is lost.
No, it is Ordinary
People.
Yeah.
Ah, God.
So those 4. So as I was looking in, it was sort of the question becomes, why did Robert Redford decide to do Captain America: The Winter Soldier? Like a very prestigious director, like he could pretty much do whatever he wanted. Creator of the Sundance Film Festival, philanthropist, like all this. Why do this? And the answer that he gave was that he was interested in the next gen technology. Like he was interested in how they were making these big budget movies with green screens and digital and all the placement. He wanted to be in and see how it was done from that perspective. Like he was like George Lucas. He is a film nerd, and he wanted to be like, oh, like when Butch Cassidy and the Kids, we dressed up as cowboys and we ran out on the thing. But now you guys are in studios with green screens. How does this work? And so he really wanted to be in. And of course, then they put him in, and they built the set, and he didn't get to see any of the green screens or special effects or any of the stuff. But apparently, he had a really good time on the movie, enough that he would eventually come back and reprise this role.
Well, he's a treat because he is a grounding agent for this movie, right? Like he is a thing.
Yeah.
He is an element of the movie that makes it feel less like a superhero movie and more like a thriller. And arguably, it may be the most important casting that the Russos were able to do for this movie, to be to enter other quadrants that it might never have actually ever actually appealed to.
And I think there's something about the way this scene plays out that really it perfectly mirrors the scene from Avengers, the first Avengers movie, where the council wants to nuke New York and Nick is the one pushing back against them. And I think it does, again, spoilers, forgive me, that Pierce is not going to be a good guy by the end of this movie.
What?
But this scene does there are some times in movies where the movie tries so hard to show you that this person's a good guy that you're like, okay, clearly he's going to, have his villain switch at some point, his heel turn at some point soon. This doesn't do that, but having him play that role of, I am the one standing against the bureaucracy, standing on the side of let's really get things done instead of just all the bureaucratic covering our ass. Him playing the Nick Fury role, I think it really kind of cements this guy is Nick Fury's ally. This guy is Cap's ally. This guy is going to need to have his nose twisted a little bit because obviously Cap is right and the way Fury is wrong, and so Pierce is wrong, but he's not going to be one of the real bad guys. And I think it helps to make his eventual true heel turn that much more powerful. And I think that was very intentionally done and very well done.
Yeah, because we see him standing up to these politicians and bureaucrats, not immediately like going, oh yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, we'll take care of it. Like he is the one leading this conversation, not taking orders.
And we've seen someone do that before. The fact that we saw Nick Fury do that means that we have this natural inclination to want to agree with this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think as we move like sort of off of Robert Redford and into the regular thing, I can tell you that from personal experience, his appearance did bring in 2 brand new people to the MCU, and that's my parents.
There you go.
The first Marvel movie they saw was this one because
of Robert Redford
was in it.
Yeah, hallelujah.
They had no interest until that point. So that's 2 tickets I know were sold specifically for this, because I got a text in the morning and then it came out saying, hey, we're going to see this. What do we need to know? And I was like, oh, God.
Oh, no.
What do I tell my 70-ish at the time old parent about like what everything they know about the Marvel universe going into this? I was like, well,
did you have a moment of vindication on behalf of 15-year-old Kyle, who'd always wanted his parents to listen and they didn't really care? And now you're like, see,
you took me to the comic book store and you wouldn't listen when I wanted to tell him. And now here we
fantastic.
are.
Yeah. Well, and am I right? Also, I feel like we're now at a point, and we have been for the last 10 years, where a lot of big name Oscar caliber actors who are not normally associated with superheroes and film stuff, superheroes and this kind of movie, wind up having one-off cameos in Marvel projects. Glenn Close is the one who most comes to mind, but I feel like a lot of others, Sigourney Weaver in the Defenders TV show.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Exactly. And my sense is that it kind of started with Redford. Like he was one of the first of like, oh, I don't think of him in a comic book movie. That's a new thing.
That's an interesting observation. I don't think it ends at Marvel. I mean, does Viola Davis do a DC part without Redford doing this?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I'd love to see some of the Kremlinology on those discussions, getting those people to pay attention to this. I mean, I'm sure it's just here's a dump truck of cash. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he sits down and goes, well, Redford's in one.
Yeah.
And they have to be like, oh, well. That's a ball game of a different color.
That's right.
It's like that interview with Harrison Ford. They asked him how he felt about having to like have all the red makeup and stuff like that for the latest of the Captain America movies, and he literally said that's what the money's for.
So we as we start this thing, we see this is the World Security Council. This is a MCU invention. The closest comic book version is called the National Security Council, and they reported directly to the President of the United States. But they obviously have taken it global.
What is the Pierce? What's the Pierce representation in the comics?
Alexander Pierce is just like a SHIELD agent. Like I sort of looked up too. Like his Wikipedia entry is like 2 paragraphs. Like he's just a guy. Like he was just a person that worked with Nick Fury a couple of times, and that was kind of it. He showed up in the 2 different series, and he was never really a turncoat. He was never really important in SHIELD. He was just sort of another of many SHIELD agents who held the chair for a while.
A comic book paper hanger made more famous by Robert Redford.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah, honestly.
Well, I think this. You have another game for us. Is that what you're about to?
No, but so we have to talk about this is first appearances.
Yes,
so we have
a whole council.
So we start with Councilman Rockwell, played by Alan Dale, originally from New Zealand. 94 credits on IMDb, known for Star Trek Nemesis. He was in many episodes of The OC and Ugly Betty, but most people know him as Charles Widmore from Lost.
Yeah. Crazy.
As we move to the side, then Councilman Singh is Bernard White. He is originally from Sri Lanka. He has 130 credits on IMDb, including The Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions. He will later reprise this role on an episode of What If. But what I found interesting about him is he did something pretty amazing. In 1985, he did the trifecta. He appeared on Knight Rider, Street Hawk, and Highway to Heaven.
What
a 1985 he had.
That's incredible. I note no Airwolf.
No, unfortunately, no Airwolf for that year. But hey, the 3. And you'd think that would be enough. But in 2001, he did it again because he appeared on X-Files, Alias, and Touched by an Angel.
I like how he has the heaven corner in both years.
Right? Exactly. And say, Matthew, if you have not covered Highway to Heaven and Touched by an Angel,
that's a twofer
on your show. There's a perfect entry point here.
I will do an in-depth look at the theology of those shows.
I think you'd be surprised if you put Charmed in there. You have a whole thing.
Charmed.
All right, so moving down, we have a Councilwoman Holly. This is Jenny Agutter from England. She is a OBE award winner. 120 credits on IMDb. She is reprising this role from her first appearance in The Avengers. She was also on the World Security Council then. She is known most for Logan's Run, American Wolf in London, and deep nerd credit Blake's 7.
Oh, that I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. That was the time of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Doctor Who at its prime. But it never. There's always rumors about a big reboot remake, but it never has happened so far. But it's some fun 80s, 70s, 80s cheese. Okay, so then Councilman Yen. This is Chen Han born in Singapore. 29 credits on IMDb. Probably most known recently from Mortal Kombat as Shang Tsung. He also did many episodes of Arrow. He was in one of the best sleeper video games of the last year, Sleeping Dogs. If you've not played that, it is phenomenal. But when you see him, you probably think, I know the Squealers when I see them, because he's Mr. Lau from The Dark Knight, who the Joker immediately pegs as a person who will roll over when he is taken. So that is your World Security Council.
What a rogues gallery of character actors that they're able to throw on this Security Council floor. Outstanding.
So in the comics, SHIELD is a purely American organization.
Pretty much, yeah. It reports directly to the president. Eventually, I think they sort of go global, but yeah, it is is thought of as working for the U.S. of A.
Okay. I particularly appreciate this sequence because of how hard the Russos ended up working to shape the film and the political arguments around such contemporary debates, right? Around, you watch these sequence, you watch the sort of terrorist talk, you're thinking drone strikes and preemptive action and minority report structure and civil liberties laws. And I think this sequence sufficiently introduces a worldview that directly opposes Cap's Greatest Generation worldview, right? Like this is, they went hard on introducing Captain America to modern military, non-superhero modern military and political conflict. And I think it works very, very well.
Yeah. And they never say exactly who they're representing, but you sort of see a wide thing where you're sort of like, okay, that's probably a senator, and this is probably, from England, from China, from they never say directly, but you kind of get an idea of like, okay, these are probably representing some major world powers.
And there's a nice moment where, without having to push it hard, they remind you that these people, their focus is still somewhat on who they are representing, not on the idea that they are representing the world. We have that one who, as you said, we don't know if he's Sri Lankan or Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi, but he talks about how this thing was very close to his own nation's territorial waters. And I thought that's a nice reminder of, in theory, these are people who are supposed to be thinking about world security, not about each individual nation's security, but they're not. That's not where they are.
I was curious to hear both of your thoughts. How much do you think they know about Project Insight at this point? Like, I would they would have to have signed off on it.
I wonder, but that I think that just assuming that they know everything about it is called into question immediately when Nick enters the room and all of their holograms sink into the floor, right? It almost feels like they're trying to keep a secret from the World Security Council. I don't know fully, but it does seem to me that there is some sort of compartmentalization that Pierce is working toward.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that when Nick shows up, Pierce ends the meeting.
Yeah, it's over.
Like, and they say, more trouble? And he said, depends on your definition.
Yeah.
And then just like,
gone.
Right.
And all.
Yep.
Right. Well, and we do know that the Hydra penetration has gone even to some of the governmental advisors of all these things, like Larry, the character, the senator played by Larry Sanders.
Gary Shandling.
Was Gary Shandling,
yeah.
Thank you. He was in the Larry Sanders Show. And I'm trying to remember if at the end of this movie we see any of these individual people being kind of like rounded up. But I think the idea that some of them are more like Nick Fury and that they like Project Insight, but they haven't really been let in on, the true inner plan. And some of them are more like Senator Gary Shandling, and that's not his actual name, but that's the actor, and are themselves fully Hydra themselves. Is that there's probably some mix among them.
Yeah, because I think, we'll see them again. Like they'll be in this room again, like in actual physical forms, towards the end, and then when things get revealed, then we'll see how they react. I also do like the fact that in the process of the conversation, we find out that Batroc is not French; he's Algerian.
Get it right, like, council member.
Yeah, I know. Would you like me to show you a map?
Yeah,
and I was like,
so,
so sassy.
What's your take on the presentation of Fury and Pierce as colleagues at the office?
Yeah, I thought that was fun. I like the idea that we'll hear some like that story or whatever too of like sort of how they bonded, but the idea that their paths split at that point, like they were both soldiers and then one decided to become a politician and the other one decided to become a spy master. But it was like to have that mutual thing. I thought that was really smart. And to also even to mentally connect in our things. Oh yes, they are peers as actors. Like Samuel L. Jackson and Rob Redford are not that different in age. Like they are of a generation. I think Samuel Jackson is sort of a little bit like maybe the class below. But if Hollywood is a high school, he would have been.
They would have been in school together
in the 4 years.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Like even if it was like senior to freshman, like he would have been at school at the same time. So to have them have that sort of meeting as equals thing, I think was really smart, because if Nick was immediately like, oh, I just boss, I wanted to, I I just found a thing. I don't know if it's, like, to have them meet, like, you run your side of it, I run my side of it. But like, now that we're overlapping on this project, we need to like take a look at, because something's gone wrong because I don't have access to everything.
And it's a side of Nick Fury we haven't seen before because, to the perspective of Cap and Iron Man and stuff like that, he is who the buck stops with. That's the one they interact with. And even in the Avengers movie, the council doesn't seem like his boss. The council seems like this group of bureaucrats that he has to kind of deal with. But, as in his great line, because it's a stupid decision, I've decided to ignore it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Pierce is not someone whose decision he can ignore. And I think that it puts a nice shift on, wait, Fury is not actually the overall boss here. Pierce really is his superior, and Fury knows that, and Fury kind of works with that. And I think that helps set up a lot of what comes later.
Yeah, and you can sort of feel the energy shift when it goes from like Pierce sort of running this council or whatever to then being with Nick. There's a very like he shifts his energy to sort of like an intimate sort of like, hey, we're just a couple of guys talking here, as opposed to like this sort of like formal thing of like, we need to stop this progress. Like the project must continue. It just becomes a couple of guys talking in the back room.
Yeah, right. This is a very private water cooler conversation between friends. That's the thing that I think is so important. And that last line, after he says, after Pierce says, Nick, it's not a favor, it's a subcommittee hearing, a long one. Fury says could be nothing, probably is nothing. I just need some time to make sure it's nothing. But if it's something, and this is for the purposes of our show, what we call a mic drop minute ender, we'll both be damn glad those helicarriers aren't in the air. And scene. That's right. We end on a full line. It's amazing. We get to Winter Soldier our way out of this minute. Because it shows these friends and colleagues and leaders have a shared interest in what's going on, and oh my gosh, that's baiting us, right? This is like intrigue edgelording for us, right? Because their relationship is going to be eventually called into question.
So at this point, are you thinking that as soon as Nick leaves, then Alexander Pierce is on the phone and like calling in the hit?
It's got to be, right?
Yeah. Like as soon as the door shuts.
Like, he's like, we need to do a cleanup on Isle Fury. Yeah.
Here's my question. Do you think Pierce honestly thought Fury would go along with what Insight was? Like, I think you're right that this might have sped up the timing, but I think from Pierce's perspective, there was never going to be a world where Fury lives to the end of Project Insight.
Interesting.
That is an interesting question, because you can position it as even as a thought experiment that Pierce knew he needed Fury to get the project launched, but no further.
Because with Fury comes Captain America, comes Black Widow, comes Avenger, like that, a very valuable piece right there. And replacing Nick at this stage would be really, really dangerous to what they're doing.
Right. And it adds to me, I think, also a follow-up question that we'll get to when, we hear what the actual Project Insight is. I want to know what Fury thinks it is. Like, what is it that Fury thinks those helicarriers are going to do that is not just murdering 20 million people because they might be bad, but it's still something that someone like Cap would probably find objectionable. Like, I wonder, what is the line that Nick Fury says, this is okay, but the actual Project Insight is not?
Yeah. And that I think we're going to see a little of that in the thing, but not enough for my opinion. And then what is it that the fact that he couldn't get into this one file that makes him go stop everything? Like, it just seems like, wouldn't you just go talk to Danny Pudi in IT and because he's in that building, like you could just go down and talk to him.
Pudi.
Foreshadowing. Like,
yep, that was good.
We're going to see him.
That was good.
What is Nick thinking is a recurring thing through all of the MCU.
And we're going to have a nice run of Nick here in the coming weeks. I'm very excited to see whatever is going to happen to Nick. And I think that's it. That's our 5 minutes. You guys have anything else?
No, I think it's all smooth sailing from here.
It's all, of course it is. That's right. We're just going to hang out in our Adirondack chairs, sip those mimosas. It's fine. Nick and Pierce.
The Jackson Redford buddy film.
Yep. That's it. That's what you get. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. Don't forget, you can check out, well, let's see, Ethical Panda, where can people find your shows?
TheEthicalPanda.com. There you will find information about superhero ethics, a podcast where we discuss a lot of the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. You can also find the Star Wars Generations podcast, which will quite soon, probably around the time that this episode comes out, we'll be discussing Maul Shadow Lord, the new animated show that Star Wars will be launching pretty soon, that tells us about no longer Darth, now just Maul, becoming the criminal enterprise leader that he will be. So that'll be exciting.
Can't wait. Kyle, Mr. Wade into the Weird himself.
That's right. CraftingChaos.fun. You can find our podcast we do about how we make art when it feels like the world is on fire. Archives are there, and also you can ask us questions. It's a lot of fun, and it gets very, very silly.
This has been really fun, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of Kyle Olsen and Matthew Fox, I'm Pete Wright. We'll see you next week right here on Marvel Movie Minute.
Enough said.
Waka waka.